Because there was something that you sent me in your, and you're very organized. These are the 3 points I want to talk about
Oh
here.
yeah, well, I mean, there's just
good luck with that.
well, Tara, I do that to put some reins around myself because I will talk about brand stories forever.
So there's one thing I want to kind of get into then, the feeling, the pressure that we do put ourselves on the personal brand. Because one thing I've discovered in working with clients, when you're selling a product, you can say anything you want to about the product. You can say anything you want to about a faceless organization. The product will still behave the same way the product is meant to. But if you say certain things, if you challenge about a human, it's the feelings, like it's the internal dialogue that comes up that affects your delivery, what story you tell and how you tell it. So I think for a lot of people, when they're approaching their brand messaging and their brand story, they play it safe because they're scared to make a mistake.
Yes.
There was a point that you said in your notes where you said, "Oh, I messed up my messaging for years." So
terrible.
Let's live in that space. So, show your cards. Tell me more then about this messed up messaging.
Let's expose the irony of a brand strategist messing up her own brand messaging. I will say, I feel like I should apologize to all of those clients that I, hounded for the first 2 years of my business, and to the ones who hired me because I think they just liked me, but it wasn't because of my brand message. And to the ones who said no because they were confused, I love you all and I'm sorry.
So bring me back to that moment. Did you know that your messaging was messed up?
No, of course not. No, I thought I was a super smart strategist saying all the smart things. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I spent 15 years in agencies, building beautiful big brand strategies and well-trained and amazing processes from global agencies around the world. So I was very confident in my own ability to build other people's brand messages. And I went from big agencies where I had multinational clients like PepsiCo, where I was building brand strategies for like many, many different brands and social media strategies. And then, of course, when I came out, I wasn't as a consultant, I wasn't finding those big clients. You don't really get into the door with those big ones when you're like a one-person operation. And so naturally, I started working for smaller to medium businesses and medium-sized enterprises, but they were less marketing savvy.
Yes.
And that did not connect for me. I was doing a lot more educating for sure. I realized that, but that was okay. I loved talking about brand strategy. So I was like, oh, great. This person's going to let me talk about brand strategy for 30 minutes. So I would talk a lot about brand strategy. And to be honest, I bamboozled them with technical stuff about brand strategy. And so I couldn't, and like I said, some people were hiring me, so I was keeping the lights on and still growing the business. But I don't think it was because they bought what I was selling necessarily, but I think they bought that I could deliver and that I had the expertise, and they didn't necessarily understand what I realized later, which I couldn't fathom at the time, is a lot of people don't know what a brand strategy is.
No.
And I'm here going, you need a brand strategy. And they're like, we need a what? And then I'm getting into this big sell about a brand strategy. And they're like, we came for a digital strategy. And I'm like, we need to build your brand strategy first, which is normally actually what's required if it doesn't exist. At some point, I stopped bamboozling them and I started asking people if they understood.
Yes. Yeah.
And I didn't obviously say, do you understand what a brand strategy was? But I'd be like, oh, are you familiar with brand strategy? And, some people wouldn't. And here's the other thing. There was a cultural issue too. Irish Canadian, obviously. Then I was just Irish living in Canada. Now I'm here a long time, so I claim both. But Irish people are very direct, and when they don't understand something, it is a very live conversation. If somebody says something, you're like, what? And you'd be like, what the F? What are you talking about? And you'll get clarity and you'll move on. And Canadians in general, obviously I'm not going to stereotype, would be a little bit more polite and not necessarily fess up to not understanding. Yeah. And a mismatch there where I was assuming people would tell me if they didn't understand.
Yeah.
Nobody tells you when they don't understand. So I stopped talking about brand strategy.
Yes.
And so then I started talking about the components of brand strategy.
Yeah.
Because when I talked about, and I'll, like the three big components, right? To build a brand strategy, you have to uncover a competitive advantage. So you have to do a competitor audit. But when I talk to people about, competitive audits, they're like, oh yeah, we get that. It's valuable to go out there and investigate competitors and look for an opportunity. Like, it's a no-brainer. It makes sense. And like, they'd be like, they're nodding their head and they're like, okay, you want that? Okay, we'll do that one. Okay. And then I'd be like, so, and the other part is customer research. You have to uncover what customers need and want. So I would say, like, I would do customer research and I would uncover their needs and wants, and we'd see if that's different from what you think it is. And we'd make sure that we build a message that serves what they actually want or need.
Yeah.
And that's a no-brainer. People are like, oh, I get it. And then, so that was fine. So I was talking about the components, and that helped. That moved me along. Still selling the whole brand strategy, but I was just explaining it in the pieces. But I was still kind of explaining the how, So I had moved on, and this happened over a few years. This was not I'm talking about it like it was short. Yeah. This was a couple of years. Yeah. So then I kind of stepped back again and I was like, right, well, what does all this mean? Like, how can I put my customer, what does this mean for the customer? At the end of the day, you always have to put yourself in the customer's shoes and go, what's in it for me? When I started thinking about, okay, well, when I put all these things together, like, if we're finding a competitive advantage in the market, what does that mean? Well, that means we can, focus on a niche and we can grow our market share. Okay, that's a big win. If we find out what customers need and want, we can make them happier. That, happier customers means more customers, that recommend us to other people. And when we get really clear on the value of brand offers, we can focus on evolving a brand in that direction. It's like, well, what does all of that mean? I was like, oh, all those things grow a business.
Yeah.
Whether it's one of them or whether it's all of them, they all grow a business. So then I was like, that was my aha moment. I was like, well, what do I do? And I was like, well, I build brand stories that grow businesses.
Yeah.
So I build brand stories that grow businesses. And that's like, and it took me 3 years to get there.
Yeah.
And it took me a lot of bumps.
Well, and that's where I kind of wanted to spend a little time and thank you so much for sharing like the fullness of that journey, because I relate to that so hard. There is something about, especially when you are used to offering this service in a corporation, where there is the understanding of how marketing works, how sales works. You're in these niched areas where there's a commonality and an understanding. When you're now taking those skill set to a new market that doesn't necessarily understand. There are a lot of businesses out there that know they need marketing. They know that they need sales and they need a digital presence. They don't know why. they don't know what they're looking for, how these pieces all work together. So when you are the service provider and you're crossing over in this bridge, you do actually need that exploration and just engaging with customers and clients and just testing stuff out and just having these conversations and being aware of when these conversations aren't working. To me, that's also like, that's in the personal branding space. Yeah. That's a powerful marketing tool. You're taking in data of who do I need to be in this space. I understand how I can be in the established corporate space. Yeah. This is brand new. I'm offering this extra deliverable of educating them and guiding them to a point of understanding. A client that understands what you do is going to have more success than a client who's just like, yeah, sure, we'll just check off this box. You tell me when I'm booked on TV. I'm like, no. You need to understand what you're doing with your story and how you're the spokesperson. And same journey. I actually did have to go through, and I'm still going through. Every time I get to a point where I'm like, hang on a second, sales are slowing. What's happening in the conversation? So I actually did this at the end of the end of the year last year, where I was like, okay, the small businesses owners, they're putting off these decisions. They want to work with me, but January is too soon. They're looking at April. I'm like, what's going on? Oh, right, a recession is coming. If we're not already in it, it's on the horizon.
We're there. Just nobody's admitting it.
Nobody's admitting it
for a year.
But so when I looked around, I was like, okay, they don't need me right now. They have other priorities right now. who does need me? And that's where my eye went to, but the corporations need me because they're making really hard choices.
Yeah.
So I was able to pivot that way. So in terms of, I don't spend a lot of time doing A/B testing. I collect testimonials, but I'm also always listening to my clients.
Yeah.
What are you going through? What are you going with? In my discovery calls, I ask more questions. I listen more than I talk. I save the talking for my social media. So I don't sell in socials, but I create the relationship. So by the time people are in conversation with me, it's a bit like a celebrity. They recognize me. They have a relationship with me already. And I'm like, we're meeting for the first time. I don't know who you are. It's kind of weird that way. But that way I'm able to, they understand, they know who I am. I don't have to prove anything. I don't have to fill that space.
Yeah.
I get to listen to what they're really looking for. And sometimes what they're looking for, they're not ready for me yet. If they need sales, if they need to move product and fill an appointment book, they don't need me. I'm further down the road. So then I'll recommend them to someone in my network. But a lot of businesses, we think that we understand sales and marketing and branding and all this stuff, but we actually don't. We do need people to help guide us through because they have that specialty.
Wow. Well, there's so many things you've hit on there that I think are wonderful. But one of the things that I love about what you're saying there is that you recognize that social isn't for selling.
Yeah.
Speaking things aren't for selling. You need to be doing what you're doing, Tara, which is like using your visibility work, your social work, whether it's newsletters, whether it's social, whether it's doing talks, things like this, to get across your perspective and share some of your expertise so that when they do meet you, you don't have to start at point one, like, because that's a big job to do in a small meeting. You know what I mean? So it is critical that that work is done. And I think where people struggle a lot, I mean, there's been times when I've struggled with it too, is that as a business owner, you're always playing with the balance of, I need to bring in sales, I need to bring in clients, but I have to do the long game work of the visibility work and the getting my perspective out there and being a thought leader. Gone are the days when the first time you meet your potential client is in person and you get to have that lovely one-on-one interaction where you get to shine. Let's be honest. It's true. You get to shine. You get to show them all of you. They get to see your expressions, your body language, your enthusiasm, your interest in the work. You get to troubleshoot things together. You get to give them a little experience, like a little sample of what it's like to work with you. It's wonderful to have that. But those days are gone. That is not the first interaction. They might have up to 10 interactions with you online and you have never been there.
Yeah.
And that's when they bump across a post that you've done on social. They see something you put out on LinkedIn and they're kind of interested and they go and check your profile and they have a little look and then they move on. They're doing something else. These are little snippet moments, while they're in the middle of other things. You might have done a little video like this and they catch the first 5 minutes and they're like, oh, it's really good, and they save it for later. Many of those moments are going to happen before they ever decide to meet you the first time, and so what's really important is acknowledging that you have to ensure that every place they interact with, let's call it virtual you. And it might be passive virtual you, which is words in a bio or, words on a LinkedIn post, or it might be a video that's a little bit more active. But these are all you. These are them interacting with you. And so you have to make sure that in every single place you live online, that you have a strategic message that's coming across. And not just in you can have lots of different content ideas and things like that, but you've got to be clear about what you want them to know. If they only watch that video for 5 seconds, what do you want them to know about them? I want everybody to know that I build brand stories to grow businesses. And I'm like, if that's all that you know about me, then that's a win, if that's all. So I use it as my intro. I use it as my extra. I throw it in there in different ways. I reiterate it in how I talk about it. I'm always, I'm never just building brands, for the joy of building brands and building them because I want a business to grow as a result and an owner to grow. So, it's just so important. Like personal branding now is so much more important than it was 5 years ago or 10 years ago.